Welcome in another edition of Green and Growing. Steve, Sparky, Fifer, Nathan Marzion over there. Don't forget, check out the Potawatomi Sportsbook Pro Hoops post-game show served up by Wendy's after each and every Milwaukee Bucks game this season. We'll be back on again coming up Tuesday night. We're recording this on Monday night. Be back up again Tuesday night after the Bucks and Lakers. And we will get into the different topics that we have for today's show. But before we do that, I want to get Marzion's thoughts on that Oklahoma City Thunder game on Sunday night. In my opinion, that was probably the best game they've played all season from a Bucks perspective. Defensively, for certain defensively, that was probably the best game they've played to this point, and definitely under Doc Rivers, the best game they've played. Nathan, what did you take away from that game?
Yeah, they definitely looked very connected on the defensive end. I thought that, being able to hold SGA to only 12 points was super impressive, because that's a guy that, traditionally our teams, that's the type of guy, or at least this team, that's the type of guy that would go off against you is, that bigger, longer, more athletic, guard player that is like, that's been a tough matchup for us. And so, going in that game, I kind of expected, okay, he's going to get his usual 30 plus, but for them to, show that, hey, we can hold some stars in check. Like it's not always going to be a given that these guys are going to go off against us. And to have a performance like that really does kind of show me, okay, they can do this thing. They can hold some of these players in check. And kind of same thing in the second half of the Boston game. Tatum had 23, 25 in the first half of that game. And in the second half, he didn't make, I don't know if he made a single basket. And so again, to show that for extended stretches that you can defend some of these bigger guards, bigger wings, and hold them in check is a very good sign for the playoffs. Not something that, they're just going to automatically torch us every single time. And yeah, I just thought overall, several guys looked very good defensively. And they just look more, again, they look like more playoff mode on that end of the court. The intensity level, the energy, there were several possessions that stood out where you're like, holy cow, they were flying around in that possession. They were closing out super aggressively. They were keeping stuff in front of them. And just the effort was there where, it just definitely at times this season, it hasn't been there and consistently hasn't been there. But, to have a game like that against, the Thunder, the best team in the West right now, according to the standings, was a super good sign. And again, just to play that type of ball, getting near the playoffs here. Again, that's what you want to be doing. This is the time of year you want to start having these type of games and looking this good. So it was definitely a very good sign.
I was super jacked up on the post-game show, super excited. Probably the most excited I've been after a game all year long for numerous reasons. You pointed out, stopping SGA to 12 points. And I brought this up on the post-game show that during the course of a regular season, they're not really game planning against one another, NBA teams. Right now, if you have a rivalry or you have some beef since the playoffs, like say the Heat or the Celtics, okay, maybe that's a little bit different. Maybe you treat those games differently. But otherwise, when you're just playing a normal Western Conference opponent or a random Eastern Conference opponent, you're just running your stuff. You run your offense, you run your defense, not really game planning. It felt like, and Marcus Johnson brought it up, that what a great game plan against SGA today by the Bucks. They more game planned to slow him down in that game. That game to me was Doc Rivers and this coaching staff saying, listen, we got to get some momentum here. We got to start winning some of these games in a row and build our case of why we're going to be a team to deal with here in the postseason. And you can see them starting to come around. And then you hear Doc Rivers after the game talking about how, on certain nights, he'll look at the big guys and be like, all right, man, it's your night tonight. Let's go do this. Or if he'll look at the guards and be like, you're going to have to carry us tonight. And that type of thing, and communicating what their roles are and what he wants them to do and what he expects out of them. And that's cool because, maybe one night it is all going to be about the guards. And another night it's Brooke and Bobby crashing down low and getting baskets and doing stuff like that and knowing your roles game in, game out and kind of what the game plan is versus just rolling out there. We're going to run our offense. We'll see what happens. I like this type of stuff that I'm hearing from Doc Rivers. I really do. And I'm still scared to death of the playoffs with him, obviously. But post-game press conferences, pre-game stuff, I really like what I'm hearing from Doc Rivers, Nathan.
Yeah, and as you said with the game planning, that could also be attributed somewhat to them having 2 days off in between these games. They did have that extra day to prepare specifically for this matchup instead of just treating it, if it's a back-to-back or if you only get that one day, it's not as easy to prepare. But Yeah, I mean, definitely the Doc Rivers stuff, it's just been refreshing to have a guy that you know, you just know that he's been in this game a long time. You know he's been doing this a long time. You know that he does know what he's doing. Now, is it always going to work out? Are they always going to win? Or is everything he does going to be the right decision? No, but it's just a totally different confidence level than you had with Adrian Griffin, where you were just like, there's a chance this guy has no idea what he's doing. Like, that's a very realistic chance. Whereas Doc Rivers, there's that baseline. He has that higher floor of like, this guy's been in the league a long time and he knows, how to deal with players better. He knows what stuff to focus on. He knows, this time of year, what they might need to be doing to ramp up for the playoffs. And he has more experience, using these type of guys in different situations. Giannis Dame in the pick and roll. He's played with, or he's coached, I should say, duos similar to that, where they're pick and roll type duos, and he's coached superstars, so he understands that whole dynamic of keeping the team happy and everything. It's just you're more confident with him at the helm, and I think what he's said in pressers and what we've seen on the court, I think has just displayed that the competence level that he has with this stuff, and so it's definitely someone, like you said. I'm not overly confident going into the playoffs because he is Doc Rivers still, but it's like, okay, I'm definitely more confident than I was under Adrian Griffin, and I still think that this team can win a title with Doc Rivers as their coach, and you just trust that he's gonna at least come much closer to maximizing their potential than, again, Adrian Griffin was. It just feels like they're playing, and this has been going on for a while, but they're playing more structured offensively. They're focused more around, like, they have more purpose to what they're doing, using Giannis and Dame together more. And late in games, they have much more purpose to what they're doing. And like, we're getting the ball to Dame every possession. We're running through Dame. We're running through Giannis every possession. And then defensively, we've seen they had a bad stretch defensively under Doc. They had a really good stretch defensively under Doc. But overall, it has felt like the buy-in is there. The effort level is there. They're not getting blown by quite as much. They're not giving up 120 plus as much. So it just, the signs are definitely there that, like, this is a better basketball team than it was 2 months ago. This is these last 2 months have been multiple steps in the right direction going into the playoffs compared to where we were when he first got hired here. So again, that's pretty much all you can ask for. Like, when he got hired, it was like, all right, let's hope we can figure this thing out. They're in a better position now than they were then. And I think it's not even that close. I think almost anyone who watches the team, follows the team, watches the NBA regularly would say, yeah, the Bucks are scarier now than they were
Agreed.
2 months ago. So again, that's all you can ask for. Like, that is a great position to be in, and you're close to your best ball heading into this, heading into April. So that's what you want.
I love doing the podcast with Marzion because as he talks, I get more and more things I want to talk about. We never even get to the topics half the time. Okay, so I got another one for you because I've been talking about this on the post-game show too. Again, turn on 1250 after games. I'm there. You can call in. You can yell at me, scream at me, whatever you want to do. Celebrate together. I'm there for you after every game. Dame Lillard, you said, why can't you pull him and let Pat Bev play? And you made the point of, look, just talk to him beforehand and then, let him go do his thing. And I was like, man, get out of here. You can't bench a superstar like that in that moment. I don't care what the situation is. And what happens? They do what Marzion says. Marzion deserves credit because he called it. They pulled him. They put Pat Bev in. And I was like, damn. They gave credit to you on the post-game show. Whole deal. And then this other game, Lillard gets a couple of steals. And Lillard's on the court talking with Melanie Ricks, talking about how I can play defense in this league. I can be there in end of game situations and so forth. And when that stopped playing on post game, I was like, maybe Doc didn't talk to him about this. And now he's going like, okay, you want to challenge me, Doc? I got you. Watch what I can do. I got 2 steals tonight. Watch me go on ahead. And then yesterday, Sunday, before the game, Melanie Ricks has more audio of by his locker, not on the court this time, but by his locker. And he's still going on talking about that whole scenario. Same thing. That may be, we'll see how the playoffs pay out. That move to pull him off the floor when he did may be the single greatest thing Doc Rivers does all year long. Because if that motivates Dame Lillard to play at that different level than he was playing at the end of game situations or middle to end of fourth quarters, it's a brilliant move, Marzion. An absolute brilliant move if this is the reaction you get from Lillard.
Yeah, and when we talked about that, I said these guys are pros. These guys, I don't think they're gonna get. I don't think at least a guy of Dame's caliber that has been in the league this long. Like, sure, I understand being a little offended by it. I understand being a little
Pissed.
feeling disrespected. Like, I get that. You should feel a bit disrespected, but I was like, I don't think you're gonna ruin that guy and totally ruin his whole mood and mentality, and he's gonna just shut down for the season because you benched him late in a close game. Like, no, this is like, if anything, and again, this I think what Doc realized, and at the time, I mean, again, I mentioned that they should be fine pulling him if they need to for a possession late, which is again, it was
That's
exactly
what he
that type of
did.
situation. Yeah, and that was exactly the type of situation where they had a moment before that possession where you could take him out, and it was like, okay, well, if we get the ball back, we still have timeouts left. We can get you back in the game after that. So it's just for one defensive possession quick. And they did it. I would have pulled Malik Beasley in that situation. But I mean, again, I think Doc, he knows these guys. He's been around many guys. He's been around this league a long time. Like, I think he knows which guys would, take that the wrong way, and which guys would, hey, if anything, he'll use this as it'll be something that motivates him. It'll be something that helps him, and just kind of shows him, hey, like, we want to see even more effort from you to really earn that trust late in games. Not that I think everyone's been actually pleasantly surprised a little bit by Dame's defense this season for the most part, but it still is something like, okay, there, would you rather have Patrick Beverly or Damian Lillard late in the game? The answer is pretty much Patrick Beverly. But to kind of show that to Dame and be like, hey, we're gonna roll with Pat Bev in this situation, and you instantly see Dame turn it up a notch. That whole next game, and then when it was late in the clutch against Brooklyn, the next night where he had the two big steals, I thought.
Yep.
I thought Sunday he looked better defensively than he has in most games, more like energized. So, again, I think it's just another thing where I'm not saying he did this on purpose to motivate Dame, but I think he knows that, yeah, I can do this, and Dame might be upset about it right now. And you could tell Dame was a little upset about it when it happened. Like, you could see him kind of shaking his head a little bit and a little bit frustrated. But I think Doc knew, like, this isn't a guy that is gonna lie down after this, and it isn't a guy that's just gonna, give up and really be sour after this. He's gonna use it as something to make him better going forward, and he's gonna use it as a motivating factor going forward. So again, just understanding the superstars that you have, understanding how they would respond to something like that is key in making that decision. And I think, again, having a veteran coach helps with that. Just knowing these type of players, being around several superstars, seeing different superstar personalities. Like, I think he knows which guys he could do that with that he's coached, and which guys he can't really do that with that he's coached. So, yeah.
I got something for you. Can Adrian Griffin do that? Or does Dame react completely differently if Adrian Griffin does the exact same thing in the beginning of the season?
I think Dame reacts differently.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
No,
I
I don't think it's a complete. I don't think it's a complete 180. Like, it's not like it'd be a total opposite reaction, but I do think it would be a little bit more like, okay, like, how are you taking me out when you're a first year head coach?
correct.
Like, so, and again, I'm not saying that's wrong. Like, if Doc is doing it, it's one thing. If Adrian Griffin is doing it, it's another thing. Like, they're two different coaches. They're two different experience levels. I think Dame would be justified in having a different reaction to that. But again, that's another reason why you have more confidence in this thing working out is these guys respect Doc Rivers. And the more they talk, the more you can tell they respect Doc Rivers. The more you can tell they like playing for him, and they respect the experience he has. And it never felt like they respected Adrian Griffin too much. It never was. And I'm not saying they outright disrespected him, but it was always kind of like, do those guys really trust him? Do they? And I just feel like with Doc Rivers, even if he's doing stuff that they don't really like in the moment, like, they trust that, okay, this guy knows something. This guy, he's not just doing this for no reason. I respect the decisions he's making. I'm gonna trust him. I'm gonna, they have that respect level for him. And again, that's a big thing to have when you're gunning for a championship, is to have players that respect the coach and are willing to put up with decisions that they might not like in the moment because they trust the coach.
All right. So this is the thing. When we talk about Doc and Lillard and Giannis and Middleton and that whole situation and that buy-in that goes along with it, It also helps that if those three guys are buying in, then the rest of this group is buying in. And there's a part of me that wonders, what is Marzion Beauchamp thinking? What is Andre Jackson thinking? What is Livingston thinking? What are the young guys thinking that we're getting some run under Adrian Griffin? Beauchamp was getting run under Bud. And now, since Doc came in, gets absolutely nothing at all whatsoever. They're essentially practice players at this point. And God forbid there's an injury or something in the playoffs, and you have to turn to those guys. They have like no experience since Doc has taken over, being on the floor with anybody, running anything Doc is running offensively or defensively.
Yeah, but I mean this isn't abnormal. I think sometimes people get the idea that like the Bucks are the only team that doesn't play their young guys a lot, and the only team that favors their veteran. I should say contender that favors their veteran players. With most good teams, this is what would happen. Most coaches that have any experience level would come in and say, you know, Marzion Beauchamp is not helping us win a championship this year. Like it's just unlikely. It's probably a waste of minutes to be giving him giving him minutes off the bench and taking them away from guys that really are going to be in our rotation or are planned to be in our rotation. And I think as a young player, and again, this goes back to the whole experience level and respect thing. I think you have to, when you're a young player, like I'd have to imagine those guys somewhat can respect the decision of a 20-year veteran head coach coaching a championship team, coaching a team with this level of talent that like, all right, there just isn't a spot for me right now. Like, and it's not like you're playing on a team that's struggling and you're like, why am I not being brought in the mix when a team is struggling? This team is playing well. And you see them playing well, and you see them, they're starting to go for a championship. They're starting to click, and things are starting to gel together. The playoff rotation is only going to be maybe 8 guys. So I'd have to imagine that, like, as a young player, you would have the type of perspective to say, hey, I can understand it. Like, I understand why I'm not playing right now. Obviously, they probably think they should be playing, but it's not like a secret. It's not some big question why they're not playing. It's like you haven't really shown us consistently, particularly Marzion and Andre Jackson, and Livingston. Like you haven't shown us anything consistently that says you should be playing in the playoffs. So we're gonna go with our guys that have. Again, the only one that I everyone questions and I want to see happen consistently is AJ Green. But he has started to get more minutes and stuff. So he's the only one that I think has like a legitimate gripe. Like if he's not playing, to be like, why the heck am I not in the game? Because he has shown it like consistently. But the other guys, it's like, what did Marzion Beauchamp show you down like at any point that was like this guy needs to be playing in our playoff rotation? If they're going to be upset about not being in the rotation, if they're going to, as you were saying, just like how would they react to this? If they're going to react negatively towards it, then again, it makes me doubt that player's mentality and I guess just like how good they'll be in the future based on that, because I feel like any good player, great player, like if you're going to become a great player, you would take this as motivation and not take it as something that is, super disrespectful or anything. I don't know. That's kind of how I look at that, is like if a guy's going to get super down about this and this kind of ruins his whole mood again, like if it's something that really tears him down, well, then I don't think he was ever meant to be a great NBA player to begin with. So I just think they got to recognize it's not their time right now.
He's Nathan Marzion. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. You can follow me at Sparky Radio. Take a quick time. I'll come back. I want to talk about, are the Bucks playing like a championship caliber team right now? They just took out the number 1 team in the West. They gave Boston a fight without Giannis. So are they playing like a championship caliber team yet? Does Nathan think that's so? And if not, what has to happen for him to change his mind to think they are playing like that? Well, it's Nathan Marzion on that question next. Green and Growing Podcast, download it on your Odyssey app or wherever you download your favorite podcast at. Check us out on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page, live streaming this bad boy. Again, normally record Mondays and Thursdays, but now with the Potawatomi Sportsbook Pro Hoops post-game show served up by Wendy's on 12:50 a.m. The Fan that I'm hosting. These recording times kind of get shuffled around a little bit based on the post-game schedule after Bucks games. And again, if you've missed that, download it on your Odyssey app or go to 1250amthefan.com to check out any podcasts. But again, every night, live and local, taking your calls, your tweets after every single game, the rest of the way out here. Back after this. Hey, it's Sparky, Fifer, 1250 a.m. The Fan, host of the Potawatomi Sportsbook Pro Hoops post-game show, served up by Wendy's on 1250 a.m. The Fan. Follow me on Twitter at Sparky Radio. He is Nathan Marzion. He is a Marquette fan. If you're new to the podcast, we'll talk a little bit about the NCAA tournament coming up in a little bit. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. If you're a Badger fan, you'll get trolled unbelievably. So you may want to wait till this clears a little bit here and then maybe follow Nathan. The question is this. Are the Bucks playing like a championship caliber team coming off of a huge win against Oklahoma City? I think probably the biggest win of the year. Playing tough against the Celtics without Giannis in that game either. Now, a couple more tough games coming up, starting with the Lakers on Tuesday night. And if your answer is no to that question, Nathan Marzion, what needs to happen to make your answer yes?
I mean, the only thing that needs to happen to make me reach my maximum level of confidence is just a little bit more time with the big three together, and they're going to get that in these next few weeks. But I mean, just based on how Chris has immediately looked great, Dame has been looking a lot better, and just more comfortable and really been integrated into this just a lot smoother lately. And now we're seeing Giannis, Giannis had that. That's another thing is I think Giannis just needs a little bit of time. I think 2 weeks is fine. 3 weeks is fine to get back to 100%. I think he's still at like 90, 95%. But it's like, man, you have Chris playing really well right away back from injury. You've got Dame clicking at the right time. He's shooting 42% from three since the All-Star break. And of course, Giannis is going to do what Giannis does. And you're getting some nice performances. Like Jay Crowder started to play a little bit better. And we know Malik Beasley can fill it up and be really hot from three. And even Pat's playing a little bit better. You're getting stuff from AJ Green. Like, I think it's starting to come together. Bobby's playing, at least better than he was before the trade deadline. He still has some duds, but he still has had some great games lately too. So I think it all is kind of starting to come together at the right time. I think a couple more weeks, 3 weeks is perfect to just get enough time to really be at your peak going into the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to not like what you're seeing right now. They're still going to have some bad games between now and then. They're still going to have, some negative moments, but it's just like, it seems like they're kind of figuring it out. It seems like they're getting very close to that pinnacle of how good they can be this season. When you see how Giannis and Dame are playing off of each other, when you add Chris into the mix, when you see what they're doing in the clutch, again, that's been a big thing is like seeing them go back to that Giannis Dame pick and roll every single time in the clutch. And it's really just created great crunch time offense for them that you trust. That's a big thing for me is going into a playoff series. If it's close in the last 5 minutes, do I trust your offense? Do I trust you're going to get good looks? I trust that right now. And for a little bit in the middle of the season, I didn't, but at least not as much as I do now, but that confidence level is definitely there for me. And, again, on the defensive end, we're seeing them, again, it's been mixed results lately. It hasn't been all good, but I have much more confidence in them holding teams to under 120 and not just completely unraveling defensively every game than I did early in the season. It seemed like at the beginning, this was going to be a team that had to beat everyone 138 to 132. But now it's like you're seeing them hold some teams under 100. You're seeing them more consistently hold teams under 110. And, again, it just being able to win like that is going to be necessary in the playoffs. So to see them doing it against some good teams too, some good offenses, is giving me more confidence. And so, yeah, I mean, it's nice just to have a few more weeks now to really tune up, but they're getting very close.
I think there are two things for me that will get me to thinking they're playing like a championship caliber team. One, can they play this swarming style defense they showed against the Thunder consistently, game in, game out? I don't think they can, to be honest with you. I don't. I think they can play it well in spurts, and you can get it in spurts. But I don't think they can play with that type of level of intensity 4 straight games, 5 straight games. And I think that is how you win a championship in this league. When you play that type of defense for series after series after series and make it difficult on your opponent. That's how you win a championship. And they have to get to that point of playing like they did against the Thunder against every team they play here on out. Get into that mode of playing that unrelentless style of defense every game. Middleton had 10 boards. Giannis had 19. Brook Lopez had like 2 or 3 normal. But when you have 57 rebounds, guys, that's an insane number. I mean, most night the Bucks are somewhere around 30, 43, I should say 43, 45. 57 is a huge number. And yes, they had the advantage on size coming into this game. You knew they had the advantage, but 57 rebounds in this league is a gigantic number. And I said it before and I'll say it again. They should out rebound every team they play. Every team they play, they should out rebound every team. There's no reason to be out rebounded. And that constantly happened with Adrian Griffin. And it cannot happen when you get into the playoffs. So that's part of it. The second point is got to move the ball, man. Got to move the ball. And they moved the ball against the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think Marcus Johnson called it hot potato, or Dave Kane, one of them. So they're passing around as like a hot potato. And that's more of what you want, right? It can't be like, who was it? Grand Canyon Valley State or whatever the hell the name of that team is, where it's one-on-one basketball for an entire game and they don't run a set the entire game in college basketball in the NCAA tournament. You can't have that type of stuff in the NBA. And I get it, right? Dame Lillard's a great one-on-one player. Totally understand. And he needs to get his, and that's fine. But just remember, if you get into doing that too much, the guys that aren't getting the ball are going to become disinterested on offense because they're going to be watching. And if they're disinterested on offense, they're going to become disinterested on defense. And then you're really going to be screwed because you have 2 or 3 guys every possession not really paying attention anymore because they're not involved on the offensive end. That's why passing the basketball is a good thing. Even if those guys don't take shots, the fact that they touch the ball on offense and gives them the opportunity, take a shot, pass, whatever, but you're going to touch the ball. That is a big thing when you're feeding egos at any level, whether it's high school basketball, college basketball, pro basketball. It's always the same thing. Everybody wants to touch the ball at some point, unless you're Dennis Rodman. Then you get it. You understand why you're there. But there aren't many guys like that at this point. You know, if Brook Lopez was all about blocking shots and rebounding, okay, that'd be one thing. But Brook Lopez wants to score too. He wants to take, you know, big time threes and maybe have chances at a post up once every 100 games on this team. But he wants to score too. And yes, that was a shot. It was a shot, Nathan smirked him. I won every 100 games post up. But I mean, that's, to me, those are the two things. Swarming defense consistently, game in, game out, and prove to me that you can pass the basketball like you did against Oklahoma City consistently, game in, game out. Do those two things, you win a championship.
Yeah, the passing is definitely a good one. Because that was something that even just the last few years with Bud, where it was like, there's always just been, it's like so obvious when their offense gets stagnant, and it's so obvious when their offense starts struggling that they just stop moving the ball. And it's like, as soon as they start moving it again, as soon as the defense starts shifting and you get things moving one way or things moving around and, you know, you're hitting open shooters and stuff, like all of a sudden the offense looks so much better. And all of a sudden things are easier for Giannis because, again, the defense is moving and shifting, and it's not just them planting and being able to form a wall and whatever. So that's always been a huge thing. That's always been a glaring, you know, again, something that you notice in the middle of the game. It'll be like, they just stopped moving the ball for the last 3 minutes. Like, their offense stinks. And then they go back to moving it and it looks good again. So that's definitely a good one, and something that, you know, I think just always they need to harp on, and they always need to stress is having that move, you know, not just ball movement too, but player movement, like having, you know, setting screens, running sets, and not just having, you know, okay, the ball is in Dame's hands, everyone else is standing around, or the ball is in Giannis's hands, everyone else is just standing around waiting to see what happens. You know, that's gonna happen on a couple of possessions sometimes, and I'm fine with it happening. Maybe, like, you know, again, last resort late in the shot clock, if the ball is in Dame's hands and he has to go do something, fine. But when you first bring up the ball, you know, it should be the ball is moving, or you're setting a screen, or there's some type of action. And I know this is basketball 101, but yeah, it's like just reiterating that and making sure that, hey, we're again playing with more purpose, playing with more, you know, just having that structure that they haven't always had. They never always had under Adrian Griffin. Having that is going to be big.
Talking with Nathan Marzion here on Green and Growing. Follow him on Twitter, Nathan Marzion. You can follow me at Sparky Radio. I said before we wanted to get into Nathan's NCAA hoops thoughts here at the end of the show. Obviously, big Marquette guy that you are, Marzion. I'm assuming you had them going to at least the Sweet 16, that being Marquette. But I don't believe I ever asked you how far you had Marquette going. Let's see how big of a homer you truly are. Do you have them winning the whole thing, or do you have them stopping at some point?
No, I only had them in the Sweet 16. I had them losing to Kentucky, and then Kentucky lost. So now it's kind of open for us, and
wide open.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously Houston would be a very, very difficult matchup if we get that far. I know NC State's good.
If Houston gets that far.
Yeah, but we also could lose. NC State could definitely beat us. But like Houston would be very tough with their ability to rebound and just how good of a defensive team they are. But yeah, I try not to. I don't want to be a homer with my picks. I also like to kind of hedge my emotions. Usually, I don't want to go pick the Marquette all the way in my bracket, and I'm like, well, I'm going to be rooting for them anyways. So like, kind of pick other teams, and in that way, I kind of have multiple things I can root for. So I picked Kentucky, but I had mixed emotions when they lost because I was like, okay, I had Kentucky going far in my bracket, but it helps Marquette out that they lost. So definitely, obviously the path is there right now to get to the Elite Eight and possibly further than that. But very, very happy just to get back to the Sweet 16, first time since 2013. So it's been quite a bit. And that was kind of the goal this year. That was the hump they wanted to get over. You could tell Shaka post game was emotional, and you could tell this was kind of the line they wanted to cross. And it's like anything after this is great, and it's icing on the cake. But this was at least where you had to get to this year. Was we need to get to a Sweet 16. We need to be a second weekend team. And not go out early again. So I'm just happy they at least got to this point.
But what changed? It was one simple thing. That's all it was. Kolek didn't suck. I mean, that's the difference. Yeah. Last year, he sucked. He was awful. Yeah. He absolutely killed them. There was no way they could win playing that bad. He was awful. And he felt bad and all that, and he should because he sucked. But this year, he showed up and looked like the guy that everybody thought he could look like in big moments. And he played really well. And you've got shooting all over the floor. You've got bigs, not enough. Maybe that can rebound, right? But you've got enough that can do it. You've got multiple guys that can pass the basketball really well. I mean, that team is set up to make a run to the Final Four. They're all older. I mean, a lot of these guys are older players, right? That they're more of a vet team that have been to the tournament last year. Same guys coming back for the most part this year that have been through the battles. You've got a proven head coach in Shaka Smart. Now, again, I know he's had his issues in the tournament, but he's had a run with ECU back in the day. So he's kind of been through it like Doc's been through it with Boston. So you kind of have that all set up too. Now you just need some things to fall in front of you to your favor. And I'm telling you right now, I love Kelvin Sampson. I loved Kelvin Sampson when he was with the Bucks. I loved interviewing Kelvin Sampson and talking to Kelvin Sampson. I'm a Kelvin Sampson guy. Okay. That being said, that choke job that they just did against Texas A&M, and they were able to sneak out a win against Buzz's team in overtime, that was ridiculous. And to me, if I was a Houston fan, I'd be scared out of my mind right now because that game should have been over by far. And that game would have been over had Buzz Williams' Texas A&M team shot free throws worth a damn. But the one thing we know about Buzz Williams' teams, none of his teams can ever shoot free throws. None of them. He never has teams that can shoot free throws. And it cost him. Houston is beatable. I'm telling you that right now. Houston is beatable.
They're beatable, but it's a very tough matchup for Marquette specifically because of their rebounding ability, because of how physical they are. It's Marquette. It really, like, that's the thing about Marquette that keeps me from being like super confident in them going all the way. And it kept me from saying, beginning of the year, I was like, I think this team could genuinely be a national championship team. And then I kind of have softened on that as the season's gone on a little bit because they still do have that major weakness that if you go up against a team that is great on the offensive glass, it's unlikely they're going to win. And it's just a tough thing to overcome because they are that bad at getting offensive rebound or at preventing offensive rebounds. And when they go up against a team, UConn's been that team the last year where it's like, you're probably going to struggle against that team. They're really talented and they get the offensive boards and they don't turn it over much. There's just a couple things about Marquette that I still say, they're not, they're far from a flawless team. Whereas I look at a team like, again, UConn, there's very few major holes they have. There's very few major weaknesses. It's hard to find one way to really beat them. Whereas Marquette does have that one way. Marquette does have things that you can really exploit with them. So that's kind of the thing that's kept me from being like all in on this team. Now, can they make a run? Absolutely. But if they did go up against Houston, I definitely would be, if I was a betting man, I would pick Houston in that game just because I think it's a tough matchup for most teams in the country, but particularly for a Marquette team that struggles to rebound.
Hurley may be the best coach in college basketball, period. End of story. I mean, we could talk all we want about the players that he has and all this other stuff. He doesn't have Shaq. He doesn't have LeBron. He didn't have anybody like that. And they're consistently winning and they're well coached. They do what they're supposed to do. He's a hell of a good coach. And I got a lot of respect for him. And he's shown nothing but respect towards Marquette both times this year, praising Marquette and I'm honored to play him and yada, yada, yada. But he's a really good coach, and UConn's gonna be tough. Having said that, I picked Iowa State to win the whole thing. So there you go. Marzion, who did you pick to win the whole thing before we wrap it up here?
I picked Arizona. And my picks are usually like I have to make my picks a little bit different because like than what I just think, because I mean what I think is gonna happen is UConn is gonna win. But if I'm trying to win a pool or if I'm trying to gain a
Right.
competitive advantage, I'm not gonna win picking UConn most likely. So I try to find the best value team to pick. That's also kind of why I went with Kentucky to go far. Was because I didn't want to pick Houston and I didn't want to pick Marquette to be a homer. So I was like, okay, I'll go with Kentucky instead. To try to do something a little bit different. But Arizona is my pick. I think that they're probably they're the best value pick to me. Where some people are picking them, but they're not a super common pick. And so I like them. I think that them against like UConn would be a fantastic game. And yeah, I mean it'll be. I like that there's as much as people like upsets. I like that there haven't been as many Cinderella runs because you get to have them now the great teams matching up against each other. It's not Cinderella team versus powerhouse. It's powerhouse versus powerhouse. And when you get to the end, like those are the games I want to see. Like I'd rather in the championship game see UConn Houston than I would see a 6 seed against an 8 seed. I'd rather see a two great teams battle it out. So I'm looking forward to hopefully some great matchups.
See, you're with me. Get rid of the NCAA tournament. I'm with you. All right. Follow Nathan Marzion on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. You can follow me at Sparky Radio. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll do this again later in the week. Have a good one. Toodles.